Welcome to Did She Really Say That? The podcast for women who are done following the traditional business rules that don't serve us. I am your host, Katrina Van Oud-Housden, and in every episode, we break down what it really takes to scale your business as a woman. No burnout, no BS, no apologies. So if you're ready to discover how your natural female intelligence can become your biggest and most authentic advantage, grab your free guide at createherplanner.com/free. Now let's dive into today's episode. Well, welcome to Did She Really Say That? And I'm super excited because I have Mel Cunningham with us today in a conversation that I think you're going to really love as our audience and as our listeners, because we're talking about how do you design your business, and especially as a woman that is high achieving, that wants to do amazing things, but sometimes feels like you're butting up against a system that doesn't serve you. Mel, how many times have we heard this, right? We're like, I want to build my business, but I don't want to build it the way everybody else has been building it. But there's no rules out there that says I can do it, but there's also no rules that say I can't do it. I think that is the stop. So I'm super excited to have you here with us today, really in this open conversation around how did you transition from corporate into entrepreneurial space? How did you build your business in that? And what does it look like today? And what is it going to look like in the future? So Mel, welcome to the stage. I'm super excited to have you here.
Hi, Katrina. I'm so excited to be here, and I love sharing this, and I love your mission and your goal too, to just support women as we're navigating through this crazy thing called life in the world, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't look like what we've been traditionally told as our businesses should look like, right? So oftentimes we're saying, well, you can't do that, or we hear you can't do that because that's not how things are done. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah. So let's change the pattern, right? Let's do something different. Let's start with you and your origin. So how did you get to where you are today? So like kind of give the background. Where did you get started? What's your background? And how did you end up, just how did you end up here today?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. So, yeah, I mean, I spent many, many years in corporate. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I did all the things. I led teams, worked in a very complex environment, in a very high performance driven environment. I mean, you were only as good as what you were doing that day. And so it was always that pressure, lots of pressure. And like I said, it doesn't matter what you did today. It's, what are you doing tomorrow too for us? Right. And so I did it, and I actually loved it, or I thought I loved it. And actually, I think I did love it, right. And it was just what I knew. And honestly, I had been doing this forever. I mean, from the time I was little, I always just remember that it was always about, I wanted, or I shouldn't say wanted and pushed to be the top, to be that high achiever, to do that thing, to get to that next level. And, so again, it's like what you mentioned before, like we haven't been taught a different model, and it is the model, like it's that old school model of do more, push through, just show what you can do, because that's what you're going to get rewarded for. And so I did it. And, like I said, if you looked at me from the outside and you looked at my lifestyle, you looked at everything about it, it looked like I had a great, amazing life. And you know what, to be honest, I mean, I did enjoy my life, but on the back, I was a hot mess. And I mean, I was just a hot mess, but I wasn't even admitting that to myself either, but I was. And I was just on autopilot, and I was doing everything that I thought I should do, because I wanted to get to that next level. And I was always wanting to get to that next level, right? And so then one day, everything came crashing down on me. Everything. I lost the job that I had tied my identity to. I lost the relationship I was in because I was never present in my relationship. My health suffered. I was actually in bed for almost 4 months, literally couldn't even get out of bed. My body was shutting down. And so everything crashed. And even when it crashed, my first reaction was to keep pushing through. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll just take a moment here and I'll just keep pushing through. And, oh, well, that didn't work, so let me do more. And that was a hard lesson, because through that process, and like I said, I resisted it for quite some time. And then finally, I had to kind of just tap out and be like, okay, I get it. So what's the deal here? And that was really where I had to start, creating that awareness and understanding. And I had to get quiet with myself to figure out, like, why was this happening and what was driving me. And from that point on is when I started to rebuild my life. And let me tell you what, that was a journey, and that was a lot of different things. And it wasn't the traditional things. And it wasn't the, what I thought or what, everyone's like, they're like, oh, just take a vacation. I'm like, it's more than a vacation, right? Same thing, traditional, with my health, traditional medicine was not working. And so I had to literally piece this together for myself. And that's when I started to seek out alternative, methods. And that's really when I started diving into some of these things where I was already in the peripheral of these things, but then it was like all hands on deck, let me learn. And then that's where I rebuilt my life. And from that is where my business came about too, because I was like, you can have success. Like I always talk about success without sacrifice, and you can have success without sacrificing yourself, your relationships, your health, without, trying to fit a mold that somebody else told you that you should fit. And I rebuilt my life. I live a completely different life today. I can still have success. I have more success. I actually love my life, live my life. And I love helping other women do the same thing because, it is one of those things where I feel like something has to happen. And when I look at my life, there were signs there. There were things, but I wasn't listening to them. I was just like, whatever, I'll deal with that later because I was on this path of where I wanted to go. And that's why I always say, this had to happen to me so that I would have that realization and, understand. And even when this happened to me, I could either make that decision. I had two decisions to go. Plow through, keep trying to do what I'm doing, or choose something new. And not when I was in it, but afterwards, I'm like, that was the best thing that happened to me. And so that's how I rebuilt my life. And I love helping other women do that because I'm like, I'm here to tell you that we're not here to just try to survive success. We're here to actually love our life.
And I think what you've pointed out, Mel, there's a couple of things in your journey that I think as I hear you talk about our audience is relating to this. The women are listening to this going, I've done that, right? So like the pushing through of burning out, what does success look like? I came from the corporate background. Also, my listeners know I was a chef at Walt Disney World and I loved it. I thought everything was a hunky-dory, but I also remember having conversations where I was saying I'm burnt out. I'm exhausted. And yet I would still show up the next day and do the exact same thing over and over again. And I think that if you want to anchor it, that's kind of what it is. Like, something is off, or you're feeling like this is the same old, ho hum drum kind of way of doing life. But you're like, but this is how you get to success. This is how you get to the next level. This is how you rise up. And like you, there was a moment where I was like, well, for me, there was this moment where it's like, I don't want to rise any higher because I'm going to lose my identity completely. I'm going to lose what I chose and why I'm in this profession. And that had me retire from the kitchen. Like people always say, you quit Disney. I said, no, I intentionally retired. Trust me, I gave you a 4-month notice. That's not quitting. That's retiring. That's like making that distinct choice. And so for the listeners, when you listen to Mel's story, find if there's a moment in your life, even if you're going through it right now, where you feel like you are pushing through, because we want success and we want it to look a certain way because that's what we're told success looks like. That's the only mirror. Mel even mentioned it. It's the only mirror that's being shown to us, right? That's the only model that we have is this is what you do. This is the linear escalade that you go. And we're like, but there's a million different ways to CEO, right? And sometimes you just have to be the CEO of your own company. No one says you have to go through the ranks.
Yes, I know. And you're absolutely right about that, Katrina, is because it is a moment in time. Because I know so many of us, we want that success. But the other thing I always think about too is like we're chasing something outside of ourselves, right? And again, this is where I had to learn this myself is you have to get still and quiet enough to figure out what the hell do you want? Like, right? Like, what is it that you want? Because yes, I wanted that success. And here's the deal. I had tied so much into my title and my, whatever level I was at. I personally had tied so much of that into that where it was like, if I'm not there, then I'm not worthy. or I'm not
Mm.
good enough, right? And we all know, like you may be here sitting here going, shit, this is me too. Or you know somebody who's doing that. And that's that part where, that's the real work. And that's like what I do is, we have to really get really super clear on what it is that we want and why do we want it and what is really driving that. Because
Mm.
again, in the beginning, we were talking about those patterns. And it's like we have to understand that so that we can choose and create it the way we want to create it. Because that's the magical thing here is we actually can create exactly what we want. Like you said, maybe we do want to stay in corporate and we want to do that. There's a way to do that in a way that is aligned and feels good to you. Maybe you want to be the CEO of your own business. You can do that. But again, it always has to come back to us. But we have to and it's scary to come back to us because I know even in my process, I was like, I ignored it. I was resisting it, ignoring it because I was like, I don't want to deal with this. But once you get there, that's when everything starts to shift and change.
So let's talk about the pause, that stopping moment. Why are we as women so deathly afraid of stopping and taking that pause to get to know ourselves and actually check in to see if this is our true next step or if this is something we're striving for outside of us?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And one of the biggest things I think is again, it's everything out there. It's society, it's culture. It has been driven into us. And again, especially for women, I
Mm.
mean, whether you're in a male dominated industry or not, I mean, the deal is it's our perception, and it's a reality too, that women have to do more to achieve that same level of success, right?
Mm.
And so it's been drilled into us as women that we have to, you're just going to have to step up to the plate. And I know that was in my career as well. I'm going to have to work twice as hard as my male counterpart. And again, you know what? I didn't look at that as a negative. I just knew that that was the standard. But it's
Mm.
time for us to change that standard, right? And
Yes.
that's that part where when we can step into ourselves, and I think the reason we're so afraid is that control aspect, because we're
Mm.
afraid if we take that pause, if we take our foot off that gas pedal, we're going to lose everything. And this is the part where, and again, society tells us that, because even as women, right, we want to have that career. We want to have that great family. We want to do all these things, and women are supposed to do it all. And so we put all this pressure on ourselves to be the best in all those areas. Meanwhile, we're not giving each area of our life 100%, right? We're just trying to survive through it, and we're just trying to get through the day. So there's that fear of like, if I do this, I'm going to lose everything that I've accomplished. And this is the piece where, again, we got to go against the grain of society and culture and just take that pause. Because I am here to tell you, if you take that pause, you are going to catapult so much quicker forward by doing that. And so it comes from that place of addressing that fear, allowing and acknowledging that resistance too. Because
Mm.
like that's the other piece is it's okay to have that resistance, but it's all in how you work through that and what you do with that, because you will jump 10 steps ahead if you do that. And I get it because I was there as well. And it's just that fear. Like we're so afraid to do that because everything else, and again, like this work, I always say is this is against society. This is against culture. This is against what we've been told. And so if we can just take that moment to pause, acknowledge the fear and that resistance and say, okay, I see this and this, it's okay, but I'm choosing to move forward through this. And we're not going to push through it. We're going to move through it in a way that you want to move through it. So how that looks for you, how it looks for me, how it looks for somebody else is completely different. But when we start to really get that clarity, and that's that other piece too. Why don't we want to do it? Because honestly, the number one question, I always start this with my clients is, what do you actually want?
Mm.
And it is extremely hard for people to answer that question. It's one of the hardest questions for us to answer because we're like, because again, too, think about it. When's the last time as an adult have you asked yourself, well, what do I want? What do I want to do? We did that all the time as kids, but we don't do it as adults because we feel like we have to fit into a box. And
Yeah.
so it's so hard for people to answer that question.
And I think it's even harder for women because there's been this stigma, this conversation is, and we've seen movies, it's like, what do women want? Or we've had the questions of what is a woman? And so you actually compounding this as women is like, if you're asking us to define what being a woman is, and then you ask me what is it that I want, I promise you it's more likely, at least it's been for me when I first started this journey myself, was very surface.
Yeah.
I just want to survive.
Ah,
Usually that's like the depth of where I'm at. And then as you kind of work through the process and working with you even, there's this depth that starts to happen. There's this sense of like what's the next layer? It's like almost like peeling back an onion and recognizing there's a depth, there's a wealth of wisdom, there's a well of knowledge
mhm.
that we women have not been tapping into because we're told that it's too woo, it's too gut feelingish, it's too empathetic, it's too much, but not enough. I think
Yeah.
is the phrase I often hear for this. So let's transition into the designing of your business. I know a lot of our women are out there are business owners and they're like, okay, I'm thinking about leaving corporate and I want to start my own business. What does that look like? Like, what's been your journey? How did you get this all set up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I mean, I think the big thing is taking that leap, right, from corporate to entrepreneurship. Again, too, this can be super, super scary. So I always say, like, the one of my biggest lessons I've learned in the whole process is, again, as a high achiever, we're kind of control freaks too. We want things to just work. And so I had this vision of how I wanted my business to be. And I was like, and this is what I'm going to offer. And this is like, I was like, I had it all laid out, right? Well, then you put it out in the world, right? And I resisted initially when somebody would ask for something different than what I wanted to offer. And I was like, no, this
Mm,
is what I offer, right? And so I had to learn. My biggest lesson was we do need to have that vision. We do need to have that clarity of what it is that we want. And we also have to have the openness of saying, let's see how this unfolds. Because
mm.
again, too, even in corporate America, it's like we have the goal, we have the expectation, we go, we do it. And oftentimes in that environment, there's a structure that we must follow, right? In entrepreneurship, it's free for all, like, right? Because every single business is going to be different based on the individual. And
Yep.
so I think that is one of the biggest things that I had to learn. And I think that was one of the things that created some challenges for me in the very beginning. So again, it's like I always say too, find something that you love to do, right? Because it's
Mm.
always that whole thing of like, why are you doing it? And it's not about like, like even with me when I say, hey, I want to support other women. No, I'm doing it just because I've lived this and I know how this can change people's lives and I know how detrimental it can be. I know how it can affect you on both sides of it. And I want to support women in this journey. And so as I mapped out my business, each year it's been a different layer and understanding of like, where is my focus and being open? Because I think this happens a lot with entrepreneurs is we have that vision, we have that idea, and we get stuck in our way, which again, too, that's what creates the challenges for us. And as I've gone through this I saw that awareness and I was like, okay, let's see. And my business today has evolved based out of the conversations and everything that comes from the clients because again, my journey is my journey. And so that's where everything I do is very, very personalized. There isn't, and like I said, in the beginning, it was like, ABC, and that's what you do. And we put you in a box. And again, what does that say? That's back to that corporate mentality. And so I had to unwind that for myself. So
Mm.
now today, highly personalized, and it's like meeting my clients where they're at so that we can get those best results. So, my journey has been, again, a journey of my own of really understanding and growth for me personally as well, right? Because we take that corporate background and then we want to apply all the corporate principles. And then we're like, wait, why is this not working here? And I think that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. And I think sometimes for new entrepreneurs, it's hard for us to kind of just go with the flow. So
Yeah.
I think really that's been my part is let go a little bit, go with the flow, and I always keep coming back to that clarity and understanding of why, what are you doing? And it's all going to work out for you.
So the one question that keeps coming up for me as I'm listening to you is how did you get your very first client?
Well, my very first client actually was somebody that I worked with in corporate. And it was very interesting because I actually started my business when I was still in corporate. So I started to build it part time. And I started having, and again, I kept it very separate, but I would have some conversations with a few people, close confidants. And my first client was actually somebody who I was working with. And she's like, I saw how your life changed. And she's like,
Mm.
I think I need your help. And so that was my first client. But then after that, too, is just, I started just sharing the story, right? Because I think that's also another piece of it is we start to shift. And actually, I just had this conversation yesterday they were like, okay, I built out my business and where's the clients, right? And we just think that we open that door and then the clients are just going to come flooding in. And really, for me, my first clients just came from me sharing my personal story. And I think that's also another great lesson for myself. But also, again, we put so much pressure on ourselves that we want it to happen immediately. And so, even to this day, I was at a meeting last week and I had three women, and they're like, I think I need you. And again, they're in the corporate environment, they're in the area, and all it was conversation, helping them understand and see, listening to what they're experiencing, and then me being able to say, yeah, I hear you, I get you, and I've been there too, and this is what I've done. And so I think just reminding ourselves to, you know, we don't have to overcomplicate this.
So then my next question for you, and kind of going through this because you've given so many great nuggets, but I always hear as women, it's like, how do I accept payment? How do I get that first customer? What was the steps you take? Because there's this uncertainty of asking for money, right? And asking for a dollar amount of any number, right? And saying, okay, for my coaching or my services, it's X amount. How did you receive your first couple of payments from them? Were you just taking it via check? Were you taking credit cards? What was your experience in that?
Yeah, I actually my first payments were actually Venmo. My first payments were Venmo, and again too, because like you said, again, as a new entrepreneur, you're like setting up all those things. So I took Venmo, and what was very interesting though is, and I don't know, I mean, I think a lot of us entrepreneurs go through the same thing, is I did have a moment of, ooh, how do I charge for this? Like,
Mm,
right? Like, how do I charge for this? And then you think, especially as a new business owner, sometimes you're like, well, I'm new, so I can't really charge this much. I need to charge less. And so I think a lot of us go through that. And I had an internal struggle myself with that as well, of like, where is that value? And again, this is where I say entrepreneurship is, it's not only like a business growth aspect, but it's such a personal growth
personal.
aspect, right? And that was the part, is because I had to right side myself with me feeling confident that it doesn't matter if I'm brand new and I'm just doing this. Like, you've been doing this, Mel, like, right? And that
Yep.
I do have that experience, I do have that value, and I can bring that. And so I have gone through those phases of not charging enough, which I think is very common for new entrepreneurs. And then, shifting to where I charge today, even sometimes you have potential clients and they're like, wow, okay, that's more than I thought it was going to be. And again, it's like bringing it back to that value and that transformation of what they're going to receive. Because, just like anything, there's different prices all along the way, and there's value all along the way too. And so I think the biggest piece is knowing your worth. And again, as high achievers, sometimes we attach, our worthiness is attached to those outside factors. And so just really having that confidence. And again, that goes back to some internal work of being able to be centered and grounded to be able to accept that money. But there were times too, even in the beginning, where, somebody would say, well, I can't pay this, but I can pay that. And I would accept it. And again, I don't think that's right or wrong. But there is a part of, like, again, all of this is an energetic transference as well. So again, once you own you, then it's about what you put out there too, right? And then what you're attracting.
Well, and it's so interesting. I'll drop this nugget in for our listeners too. Like right now in the world, in Western civilization, women own or have control over 70% of discretionary income in our economy. 70% of discretionary income. And so we are the ones that buy and bring and bring things into our house, right? But one of the things I'm often shocked at is how little we invest in ourselves,
Mhm.
right? We're willing to put money out, thousands of dollars, invest in other people and everything else. But when it comes to our investment in ourselves, in our transformation, there's almost this like, I can't spend money on me kind of a thing. How do you have you had that conversation come up? And what are some of the things that you see women typically bulk at?
Yeah, that is, I mean, I think a lot of women deal with that. And you're absolutely right, right? We are, and again, I think this is a learned behavior. This is something that comes, this is something we learn from a very young age. Like, we don't want to put the attention on us, and we are givers. Women are givers. Women want to do. Women are about creating a space, right? And so it's much easier for us to do that than to receive. And I see this all the time. And that is one thing that I really work with my clients with. And also, when I'm talking to a potential client as well, is, helping her to see that awareness. Because again, when we invest in ourselves, when we take care of ourselves, then we become better. We can, we're better for the people around us, whether it's our family, our team, friends. And that's the part where we do have to, what's that saying? Like, you can't pour from an empty cup, or,
Yeah,
yeah,
you can't pour from an empty cup. That
yeah,
is the thing. Yes.
yeah, like you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's that part where, and women often find it selfish for us to take care of ourselves. And I'm here to tell you that if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to do all those things. And again, it's not you being selfish, it's you pouring into yourself so that then you can give 100%. So you show up differently.
Mm.
You're present. Like a lot of times, like some of my clients, families, children, they are running. I just literally, before we got on this call, I got a message from somebody. And the message was, she's like, I was working super late last night. I had to get this information out. And, and she's like, all these things. And she's like, I'm so exhausted.
Mm.
And again, what she was getting out, whether she got it out this morning or she gets it out in 3 hours, it's not gonna, like, nothing's gonna change, right? But
Yeah.
like her, she's like, I just need some time. And I'm sitting here and I'm like going, take the time for you. We think we don't have the time, but you need to take that time. And again, this goes back to that whole, that we don't understand that concept of if we just take a little time for ourselves, we recharge. And this is the other thing, is like, recharge doesn't always mean like we're going to go to the spa and we're going to do, like, recharge could be, I would say it could be like sitting there drinking your coffee in silence and sitting in the sunshine. It's as simple as that. It's about recharging ourselves so that we can be fully present, that we can be fully in control, and we can, pour into the other things that matter to us. And so women, we have a huge challenge with that because we don't feel like we deserve it. And I'm here to tell you all, you deserve it. And when you do it, you are going to see a shift in your life. And like I said, it's not something that costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, anything of that nature. But again, we have to get back to those simple, basic things to recharge ourselves so that we can show up as our best selves.
Yeah, and we talked about this before in our original meet and greet too. The pause and the rest between a man and a woman is vastly different. So
Mhm.
hormonally, we talked about how men rest in the evening. This is the circadian rhythm. They fall asleep at night, their body recharges, they rest, they get rejuvenated. For us women, we run on the infradian rhythm. And our infradian rhythm requires that we have 2 to 5 days of downtime, quiet time. So sleep doesn't necessarily rejuvenate us the way it does for men. Sometimes scheduling those days where you're doing less activities, getting more present, blocking your calendar, while it might seem again like totally unintuitive, right? It's like you can't do that. This world demands that you be on stage all the time. What I find fascinating for myself and for all the clients that I work with that do this, when we block our calendar, we actually see our business increase
Yes.
because it's not a detriment to us. It is our taking care of ourselves first. And you mentioned this, Mel. This is like if you're not blocking your calendar, and if you're not taking that time because you're afraid you're going to miss a deadline, here's the thing, everything happens in communication. And if a deadline needs to be moved by a day or two, trust me, the world is not going to collapse and end. I've yet to see that happen, right? But that is the conversation. Deadlines get moved all the time. How many of you, Mel, how many of you times have you had like a tech something like they'll promise you they're going to do something on your website and technology in a couple of weeks, 2 months later, it's still being worked on,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did the world end? Did business stop?
No.
And
No.
so that's the misconception, right? Is that if things don't get done at this exact time, and I know we're perfectionist women, like I get it, but at the same time, have a breath. And I know we're at the end here, Mel. This has been a fabulous conversation. So let's talk about the areas of entry into working with you. So you're doing B2B, women entrepreneurs, and also you host retreats, which we didn't dive into, but if you want to learn more about that from Mel, the notes and everything to connect with her are going to be down in the show notes.
Yes. No, I mean, I think really the first thing I love to do is like let's start with a conversation. Let's see where you're at. Let's see what's going on in your world. Because I always just feel like that's the other thing I see so much is so often we feel so isolated. Like we
Mm,
can't talk about this because I was there myself. And I'm like, let's just have a conversation. Let's see what's going on in your world
yep.
and let's see, where I might be able to support you. And, like I always say, this is work, but it's such a beautiful experience because once you really start to invest in yourself, take care of yourself, really understand what's driving you and learn some of these tools and these resources so that you can start to function from I would say that inner self, that internal drive versus that external drive,
Yeah.
everything in your life shifts. Your relationships get better, your success gets better. Like you said, I mean, taking that time, everything supports itself. So, I work one on one, like I said, it's highly personalized. I mean, this is such a safe container that, you come out of this and you're like, holy cow, I'm a completely different woman. And that's not an exaggeration. And that's my goal is I want you to become the best version of yourself. I also do work with teams as well, so that's the other piece of it. Like you mentioned too, communication, again, even whether you're in corporate, have, your own business, you're working with others as well, right? And how do we make everybody great at what they're doing? And I have just watched teams flourish and just grow when, you can come from your best self. So I have lots of different ways that we can, and like you mentioned, the retreats, which, those are like the creme de la creme. I mean, this is an opportunity. So when we were talking about taking care of yourself, I mean, imagine taking a week, going off grid, pouring into yourself. I mean, you will be a different woman, and that's the whole part. So again, everything is highly personalized, and let's have a conversation. Let's see what makes sense. And I'm cheering you on because you know what? I mean, we as women, we're powerful, creatures, and we can get shit done, and we can do a lot. But I want us to do it in a way that feels good, that we actually enjoy it, instead of feeling like, okay, I'm just surviving this, or this is what I have to do. So that's what I'm passionate about, and let's have a conversation.
Absolutely. So the best way to get a hold of you is going to be in the show notes, correct? So is there a
Yes.
link for you, calendar link that you're going to be sharing with them?
Yes, there's a calendar link, so you can just book on the calendar. We'll have a conversation. You can also reach me on socials, Instagram and Facebook, also on LinkedIn. And yeah, I mean, I'm here. Let's have a conversation and let's make a difference, right?
Absolutely. This has been a great conversation. And I love how you kind of shared the starting of your business. Because I think oftentimes as we're getting a business, what we forget that it is baby steps,
Hmm.
right? It is the journey what you're going on. When you're leaving corporate and you're transitioning into entrepreneurship, it is a mind shift. And having a woman like Mel that can support you in that conversation and understands that shift in the journey and even the demand of what the corporate world looks like and how do you adjust your life to live in your natural rhythm within that culture takes something.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, like what Mel said, you're going to want to revert back to a way that's out there because that's the only one that's being shown to you as what success pattern looks like. But when you connect to like Mel and myself, you'll understand that you need that different rhythm and to honor that and be in that conversation and be in that conversation with women who are staying in that conversation. I think that's the critical piece. So, Mel, thank you so much for your brilliance, for just the work you're doing in the world, for the retreats, for the grace you're giving women, for the transformation and the honor of witnessing that and just being that light inside of what often seems as darkness as women entrepreneurs and founders. So
Yes.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Um, yes, and for all of my listeners, you know that if Mel said something that resonated with you, or you thought of a woman and go, wow, I know someone that needs to hear this, then my request is to share out. Share out so that we continue to support women in the world of business and entrepreneurship, and that we honor each other in saying there is a different way. There is a way that serves women and doesn't have us competing with each other, but has us collaborating with each other. And that shift alone has enough to impact the world and make the biggest change for what we women are asking for in our work environments, in our entrepreneurial environments, and in our lives. So thank you for listening to Did She Really Say That? I am your host, Katrina Van Atchison. We'll see you on the next episode. If today's conversation hit home, don't just listen, take the next step. Download the free Create Her Authentically guide at createherplanner.com/free and discover how to build your business in alignment with your natural rhythm. And if you love this episode, please leave a review. It helps more women find the show. I'll see you in the next episode.